11 unexpected things that affect your brain. Hey guys, so today we will see 11 unexpected things that affect our brain. The human brain is a complex organ that has many interesting properties. The following list contains 11 such properties, which are often not appreciated by people who study the brain, but could be useful for those who want to improve their own knowledge of it. Sleeping 8 hours a day could add years to your life. Sleep is important for your brain. It helps you learn and remember information, feel rested and refreshed, and make good decisions. In fact, sleep can add years to your life. A study from the University of Chicago found that people who slept less than 7 hours per night had a 30s higher risk of death over 10 years compared to those who got 7-9 hours of shut. Yeah, each night one. So what does this mean for you? If you want to live longer and live well, then get enough sleep. Your mind is permanently changed by every new experience you have. The mind is a product of our experiences. It's constantly changing, and it can be trained to do things that are not natural to us. If you've ever had any kind of negative thought or emotion, then your brain has been altered by those experiences in some way. Your brain has been trained over time. It learns what works for you and what doesn't work at all. And this knowledge helps guide how your mind operates on a daily basis. For better or worse, there is more than one type of memory. Working memory is the short-term memory that you use to keep your attention focused on what you're doing. It's also called executive function or cognitive control, and it affects both your ability to pay attention and your ability to solve problems. Long-term memory stores information for later use. Explicit memories are those that come from learning, such as what someone said during a lecture or how many miles are between New York City and Los Angeles, although this one may have been changed. Implicit memories are those we learn without being aware of them, like knowing how much money is in your wallet without ever opening it up. Multitasking is unhealthy and ineffective. Multitasking is bad for your brain. It's inefficient too, and it makes you less productive and more stressed out. And that can have serious consequences on your memory, which might be why we're so bad at multitasking. In fact, it's been proven that people who do multiple things at once are less able to remember what they do in those situations than those who focus on one thing at a time, which I think makes sense. Our minds are biased towards positive events. Our brains are wired to focus on positive events, so it's no surprise that we're more likely to remember happy experiences than sad ones. This is called the positivity bias, and it's an essential part of our survival strategy. It helps us learn from previous mistakes by making us aware of what did not work before we repeat it in future situations. And it also helps us make decisions based on those lessons learned, like when you're deciding whether or not to buy a car. The downside? The positivity bias can lead us astray when it comes time for decision making, especially in business contexts where there are many factors involved in making good decisions. Emotional decisions are irrational decisions, but they are not necessarily bad decisions. Emotional decisions are not necessarily bad. They can be the best and most rational choices depending on your situation. The way you make a decision may be influenced by emotional factors, but it doesn't mean that your decision is irrational. Emotions can often lead to better outcomes than logic alone would dictate in some cases, even if that outcome isn't perfect or ideal for everyone involved. Emotional decisions are irrational decisions, but they are not necessarily bad decisions. When you make a decision based on emotion, you are more likely to stick with it. This is especially true when it comes to decisions that have a high emotional component. You'll be more likely to act rashly than rationally if your emotions are driving the choice. But while making an emotional decision can be bad in some situations and lead to poor results, it doesn't mean that every time we make choices based on our emotions is destined for failure. In fact, sometimes making decisions based purely on reason can be even worse than those made without any input from the brain at all. For example, let's say that my wife wants me to go out for dinner with her friends tomorrow night. I don't want to. She tells me this several times throughout dinner with another couple who also want us there too. It'll be good for us, she says, but I still need convincing. She suggests we go bowling instead, because bowling sounds funner than going out all night long doing nothing but drinking alcohol until closing time, and then sleeping off most of our hangover when we wake up shortly thereafter. The mind can be tricked into believing something that doesn't make sense. The mind can be tricked into believing something that doesn't make sense. The mind can be tricked into believing something that is not true. The mind can be fooled into believing something that is not true. The brain has an unlimited capacity to hold information. The brain is a dynamic system. It's constantly changing and growing, which means that it can hold an unlimited amount of information. In fact, the brain has an almost infinite capacity to store information in many different ways. And this ability is what makes it so powerful. The human brain contains 100 billion neurons, nerve cells, each with over 1,000 connections between them. This large number means that there are many ways for your brain to store and process information. Images or sounds could be stored as individual pixels. Words could be represented by letters. Memories could be stored as chemical processes in your neurons. Thoughts could be stored as electrical signals traveling along axons through synapses until they reach their destination at another neuron's dendrite, where they're translated into actionable commands. There are many interesting things about our brains that we should know and take advantage of. Our brains are amazing. Our brains can be tricked. Our brains can be trained to do amazing things. So the conclusion is, if you're looking for a way to better your life, you may want to look into the science of how our minds work. There are many interesting things about our brains that we should know and take advantage of. But before we get into those topics, it's important for us to understand exactly what goes on inside our skulls.